I was a Marine stationed in 29 Palms 2nd Battalion 7th Marines. One day during a 4-day weekend, after a long field training, me and my buddies decided to go to Las Vegas. But we had to take a shortcut through Amboy to get to I-40. We began driving down the deserted road when night fell when we saw a group of people standing in the middle of the road. They were all dressed in black robes and had their faces covered with masks. We tried to swerve around them, but they wouldn't move. We swerved to the shoulder of the road, but my Honda Civic got stuck and couldn't move because we went downhill, and climbing up through gravel in a front-wheel drive car proved impossible. I came to a complete stop. All of us were terrified by what's going on. My buddy Martin began to talk after initial shock of the swerving of the road. "What are they doing?" he asked. "I have no idea, but it looks like they are coming towards us," I said as I watched a group of people approaching the car. They came up to the car and started banging on the car windows and doors, trying to break in. We were terrified and didn't know what to do. We tried to drive away, but our car wouldn't move. The cult members started chanting and circling around us. "Jake," my other buddy, said, "What's up with these people? Who are they?" "I have no idea." Suddenly I remembered that I had a K-bar knife in my glove compartment. I immediately went down to get it out. Meanwhile, people began to shake the car. One of them appeared out of nowhere with a sledgehammer. Martin saw him walking towards us, and he yelled, "He's got a sledgehammer." I then put the car in reverse and hit the gas, running over one of them. I kept driving down until the desert floor was somewhat flat. People then began to run towards us, screaming something very loud that we couldn't hear. I turned the car towards the road and floored it. We finally got on the hardball road and I floored my car, going about 120 miles per hour. We were no longer going to Las Vegas. We went straight to nearest police station in Barstow, California. We told the officer everything. He calmly took our police report and stepped out. He came back with what looked like his supervisor, who then asked us why we were driving there so late. We told the police officer that we were just going to Las Vegas for a weekend and we had no intentions of getting in trouble. He proceeded to tell us about how dangerous it is to drive through that road at night. He told us that they periodically discover abandoned vehicles on that road and they are never able to find the driver. He said that he will contact San Bernardino Sheriff's Department and pass the report to them so they can go check it out. But he warned us not to take that road at night ever again. We returned to 29 Palms early next morning, pulled my squad leader and explained him what happened. Despite all of the seriousness of situation, he laughed at all of us. He said that he does not believe us and that he thinks that we were driving drunk, made this whole thing up. When we all returned to work on Tuesday, our fellow Marines were making fun of us, calling us abductees and cold boys. One of the lance corporals was asking if we were abducted and experimented on by aliens. He was joking, of course, but Jake, Martin, and I felt horrible as nobody believed us. About 2 months later, a Marine from 29 Palms to go to Vegas at night. Her car was discovered abandoned on the side of the road. She was never found or heard from again. Everybody wrote it off as AWOL, but I think I know what happened to her. Only if people would listen to our story, maybe they would take these threats more seriously. As for me, I will never forget that night on that lonely desert road. This next story was sent to me by an MP stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. My whole life I wanted to join the military. When I turned 18, I immediately went to see Army recruiter. My dad was in the Army, so I thought I should continue on a family tradition. I went to basic training in 8 at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. If you never heard of this place, good for you. People that are stationed there call it Fort Lost in the Woods, as it's surrounded by vast Missouri wilderness, and a lot of times basic trainees get lost in the forest while doing land navigation training. Let's just say I was happy to get out of there and go to my first duty station. I got assigned an MP battalion at Fort Riley, Kansas. There's nothing exciting about Fort Riley, Kansas. But I go where Army needs me. My job was simple: drive around and follow the checklist. It included things like checking ammo holding area gates, drive around barracks to make sure nobody is being drunk and belligerent. All was well at first. I liked the job and the people I worked with. I was even thinking about re-enlisting for another 4 years. But then something happened. One night I had to patrol an area near where everybody trains. I went and got my coffee at the shop hut, did all my radio checks, and big on driving. I got to a place called Four Corners. That's where training areas started. I began driving into a training area to make sure there was no civilian traffic there, when I noticed a figure walking down the road. At first I thought it was a random soldier returning from a long run. But then I thought to myself, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, who would be running right now? PT starts at 6:30. I decided to check it out. I turned on my lights and begun driving up towards him. As I got closer to him, I realized that it was not a soldier. He was dressed in old fatigues, something out of Civil War. Only thing I could tell was that he had a blue jacket and a blue cap. He also had a rifle, from what I can tell. I immediately stopped my car. I jumped out and I yelled at, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He did not respond. He just kept walking. I was terrified, but for some reason I still wanted to go after him. He was about 15 feet from me. When he turned around and looked at me, my heart nearly dropped to the ground. I felt a cold sensation around down my entire body. When he looked at me, I saw that his eyes were completely white, that his face was so pale that it nearly reflected off my flashlight. I've begun stepping back, shocked by what I'm seeing. He stood there for a second looking straight in my eyes, and then he turned and continued walking. As he was walking deeper in the dark, I saw his figure slowly dissipate into thin air. I ran back to my car and radio back to MP station, but I didn't quite know what to say. Instead, I just pretended that I was doing a radio check. I sped back to Fort Riley cantonment area and sat on the PX parking lot for about 2 hours thinking about what happened. I will never forget this night. I could never tell anybody about it. I didn't want to be called crazy, so I just kept quiet. About a year later, a buddy of mine also saw a strange figure. This time he was walking by Commanding General's house as my buddy was patrolling the housing area. When he shared his experience, everybody just begun laughing, everybody except an old E7 who was stationed in Fort Riley for 10 years. He approached me and my buddy and begun telling us that he saw him too. He said he looked it up and it was old soldier who committed suicide back in 19th century. Legend has it, as he returned from an expedition, he found out that his wife left him. He committed a suicide and he's been walking streets of Fort Riley ever since. This next story was sent to me by an airman stationed in Thule Air Force Base. When I joined the Air Force, I had an idyllic picture of me being stationed somewhere sunny and warm, maybe Florida or California. I could see myself taking long strolls on the beach after work. Maybe picking up surfing as a hobby, getting into scuba diving, but that's not what United States Air Force had in for me. Being security forces in the Air Force means you can get stationed practically anywhere in the world. I got very unlucky. My first duty station was Thule Air Force Base. For those of you who don't know, Thule Air Force Base is located in Greenland. It is the most northern U.S. military installation in the world, most of the year eventually frozen. There's absolutely nothing to do other than staring into the sky or enjoying a beautiful landscape of Greenland. Food was horrible, job was boring. I spend most of my days either guarding the gate or driving a road between the base and location of the radar. One night my partner and I were tasked with patrolling a lonely stretch of a road between Tulare Air Force Base and the radar. Gigantic radar was always manned 24/7 and always had bus go between there and the barracks for everybody lift. Shuttle would go there and back twice a day, once in the morning to pick up night shift guys and drop off day shift guys, same thing at night, pick up day shift guys and drop off the night shift guys. We were driving an Arctic version of F-350, the thing was diesel and super loud. We departed Security Forces Station at midnight, driving slowly along the road. Darkness of the night was a bit eerie, but lights are still. Air Force Base gave us a warm feeling that there's a civilization nearby in case something happens. But the further we got away from the base, darker it got, finally driving in pitch black darkness. My buddy had to go to the bathroom. I stopped the truck and let him out. He left his weapon and M4 carbine sitting in the vehicle. I was just listening to the radio, trying to stay awake. Then suddenly I noticed the lights in the distance. At first I thought the shuttle was making an unscheduled run, but after looking at the lights, I realized that they were not bus headlights, they were something else moving erratically up and down. When finally I saw the lights take off up to the sky, I jumped. It was trying to get my buddy's attention. He also saw it. We'd both begun to freak out. My buddy grabbed his weapon, quickly put on his helmet and pulled out his night vision goggles. He was trying to look through his night vision goggles to see what it was when the lights landed on the ground again. "Dude, what the hell are those things?" he said. "Look at how they move. They are like spheres or something." As he was talking, spheres were getting closer and closer, until they were right over us. We both were standing right next to the truck looking up when bright light shined in our faces. I don't remember what happened next. All I remember is waking up at the clinic, with a nurse standing over me. I've never seen before. We're standing behind her. Both had 511 clothes on. "Oh, thank God you're awake," she said. There were two people that I've never seen before. Were standing behind her. Both had 511 clothes on and white earpieces in their ears. "Hey, we need to talk to you about what happened last night," they said. "Okay, sure," I said. I proceeded to explain what me and my buddy had seen. Both of the men, at no point of me talking, had changed expression on their faces. It's like they heard it before. One of them handed me a piece of paper stating that this is a non-disclosure agreement that I have to sign regarding this accident. Yes, they called it an accident. What was afraid to ask any questions about what happened, as both of the men gave me very uneasy feeling. I don't know what that was. It was either some government experiment or aliens. Whatever it was, I will never forget what happened that night on that cold, dark road in Greenland. If you enjoying the content of this channel, please hit subscribe and like buttons. My channel is new and any help would be appreciated. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe, but it will cost you missing some awesome content as we immerse ourselves into dark side of military service. Thank you.